like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
Have you ever watched a moment that felt too quiet to be accidental? No dramatic confession. No carefully chosen words. No obvious gesture meant to be remembered. Just a few seconds that passed naturally, yet stayed with you long after the screen went dark. Some moments don't ask to be noticed. They don't announce their importance. They appear softly, almost unnoticed, hiding their meaning in the smallest details. And sometimes, it's precisely in those quiet moments where the truth reveals itself most clearly. Tonight's live broadcast was supposed to be simple, casual, just another ordinary moment shared with fans. But what unfolded wasn't ordinary at all. Between laughter and conversation, between pauses and gentle glances, something deeply intimate surfaced, something that couldn't be scripted and didn't need to be explained. Because when love is real, it doesn't always speak. Sometimes, it simply reaches out and holds on. In the middle of a live broadcast that initially felt light, casual, and unassuming, something quietly shifted. There was no dramatic build-up, no sudden music, no intentional pause meant to capture attention. Just two people sitting close to each other, sharing the same space, until that space slowly, almost imperceptibly, disappeared. Jimin was speaking softly, his voice calm and gentle as it often is. He smiled toward the camera, trying to keep the mood easy and warm. But if you watched closely, really watched, there were tiny pauses between his words. Small hesitations. A subtle tiredness that only those who truly care would notice. Jungkook noticed. He didn't interrupt. He didn't joke. He didn't try to shift the focus back to himself. Instead, he watched Jimin the way someone watches another person when they are fully present. Not just listening, but feeling. His gaze wasn't playful or distracted. It was steady, protective, deeply attentive. And then, without warning, Jungkook moved closer. It wasn't a big movement. Not something meant to be seen. Just a small adjustment. One step that erased the distance between them. Their shoulders touched. Jungkook hesitated for half a second, as if checking not the camera, not the audience, but Jimin. And then his arm lifted, slowly and naturally, wrapping around Jimin's body. A hug. Quiet. Jimin stopped talking. Time seemed to stretch in that moment, as if the world itself chose to slow down. He didn't react right away. He didn't laugh it off or turn it into a joke. Instead, he allowed himself to be there, inside that embrace. His shoulders softened. His breathing changed, growing deeper, calmer. Then, almost instinctively, Jimin leaned in. Closer. More comfortable. As if his body recognized that this was where it belonged. This wasn't a hug for the camera. There was no performance, no awareness of angles or framing. Jungkook's arms weren't stiff or careful. They held Jimin with the ease of someone who has done this countless times before, someone who knows exactly how to offer comfort without asking permission. Jungkook lowered his head slightly, his forehead hovering near Jimin's hair. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His body spoke clearly enough. You're safe. I've got you. Jimin smiled. Not the wide smile he usually shows the audience, but a small, unguarded one. The kind that appears when someone feels understood without having to explain themselves. His hand lifted and rested briefly on Jungkook's arm, a gentle touch that lasted only a second but carried immense meaning. It was a quiet answer. I trust you. The silence lingered. And somehow, it didn't feel awkward. It felt complete. The live chat kept moving. Comments flooded in. Thousands, millions, of people were watching. But in that moment, the world narrowed down to just the two of them. Jungkook didn't rush to let go. His embrace remained steady, grounding. Protective but not possessive. It was the kind of hug that doesn't ask for anything in return. The kind that simply says, rest here. When Jungkook finally loosened his arms, he didn't fully pull away. His body stayed close. The warmth stayed. The connection didn't break. Jimin turned his head slightly, and for a brief moment, Their eyes met. No exaggerated expressions. No dramatic reaction. Just understanding. People often ask what moments like this mean. They search for explanations, labels, definitions. But the truth is written in the smallest details. In how Jungkook didn't hesitate. In how Jimin didn't pull away. In how silence felt more natural than speech. This wasn't about one hug. It was about years of shared time, compressed into a single, honest gesture. That hug felt like home. Not a loud home. Not a crowded one. But a quiet place where someone can finally rest. Where exhaustion doesn't need to be explained. Where vulnerability is allowed to exist without fear. That is what Jungkook gave Jimin in that moment. No promises spoken out loud. No declarations meant to be remembered. Just presence. And that is often the truest form of love. Real love doesn't always arrive with grand confessions or dramatic words. Sometimes it arrives silently, in the form of an arm around your shoulders at exactly the right moment. In the decision to move closer when the world feels overwhelming. In choosing to stay, even when no one is asking you to. The live broadcast continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. They talked again. Smiled again. Laughed softly. But something had shifted. The energy between them felt gentler. Deeper. As if that hug had left a mark that couldn't be undone. To some, it may have looked like a fleeting moment. Easy to miss. Easy to dismiss. But to those who understand intimacy, the quiet kind, it was everything. Because love that is real doesn't need to be explained. It doesn't need to be proven. It is felt. And in that warm, unguarded hug, shared in silence, in front of the world, what Jungkook and Jimin shared felt undeniably alive. And when the live finally came to an end, nothing dramatic followed. No final statement. No explanation. No attempt to define what had just happened. Yet somehow, it lingered. Because some moments don't fade when the screen turns black. They stay, quietly, inside the people who witnessed them. Not because they were loud, but because they were honest. That warm embrace didn't ask to be understood. It didn't seek validation or permission. It simply existed, grounded in trust, comfort, and a connection built over time. And maybe that's the truth we often overlook. Love that is real doesn't perform. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to prove itself. It shows up in silence. It stays when words fall short. It holds on, not to be seen, but to be felt. And in that single, unguarded hug, shared without fear in front of the world, what Jungkook gave Jimin, and what Jimin quietly accepted, was something far deeper than a moment. It was home.